Hi everybody, Radical Gardener, Sunday, is that 10th, May 10th maybe? And it's cloudy, overcast, sprinkling throughout the day. There were a couple little, some thunder, and didn't seem like there was any lightning, so we're getting off so easy. I think it's like 72 or something like that, and I know a lot of you got snow, which is insane right now. But that is, grand solar minimum, and we're going to be getting more of that. And it was one of my reasons for moving down here, as I stated in the last video. I want to show you my garden, but it's all rainy, but things are popping up. Remember I told you I ripped some things out and I reseeded. So let's see, let's see. You know me, I'll never give up. I'll grow something. Just sharp learning curve. Okay, so I have a pet peeve, and it's called masks. M-A-S-K-S. They're stupid. There's a million reasons, maybe not a million, but I probably could think of 20 why you should never wear a mask. Just the fact that it's very dehumanizing, and you're being forced to talk to people where you're only seeing half of their face. It's so important that we truly see who each other are when we're communicating. It's the problem with talking on a screen or teaching on a screen. There's no real personal interaction. It's real key for us to stay kind of in the glue of humanity, that we're fully exposed on many levels to each other, and that includes all our bugs and germs and our viruses, which is what keeps us healthy. And I come from, again, I'm close to 70. I come from a time when somebody had the measles on the same block you did, and all the moms took the kids over to who had the measles to build up immune systems. I mean, I remember that. There were chickenpox parties and measles parties. I don't know. We just keep getting stupider, I guess. But anyway, so let me just start with everything I have. Start with Surgeon General doubles down. Masks increase virus. See that? U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams speaks to members of the press on the White House ground March 20th. And of course, none of that was truly reported. Mask wearing reduces oxygen up to 60%, increases risk of CO2 poisoning, causes increased face touching, viruses and bacteria saturate the outside, touching mask and surfaces spreads germs, contaminants sit within mask fibers, get re-inhaled. Fresh air is vital for immune health. So if there's a spike, it'll be when everybody takes those masks off, and they're going to be reintroduced to what they're trying to avoid. Next, it's such common sense. If you're wearing a mask, take it off. You're an idiot. Take the mask off. What, CNN told you to wear a mask? Costco told you to wear a mask? Whole Foods told you to wear a mask? Trader Joe's told you to wear a mask? Do they all have medical degrees? Is there some big connection you have with these people? With these corporations? Somebody tells me I need to wear a mask, I walk out the other door, or I pitch such a fit they let me in. N95 masks, which are easy to wear while providing substantial protection, can reduce the amount of oxygen reaching the lungs by up to 20%. Now, this is another article. This causes fatigue, may lower blood oxygen saturation, and lead to disease. That's that one. Carbon dioxide toxicity. Your visual is dimmed. Your central system here, it causes drowsiness, mild narcosis, dizziness, confusion, headache, unconsciousness. Your auditory is reduced, your hearing is reduced. Your respiratory, shortness of breath, tremors in the muscular, and your heart rate increases and your blood pressure increases, and in some people it decreases. This is why you don't wear a mask. Okay. Now, I'm going to read something from a journal, a Canadian journal, medical journal. The surgical mask is a bad fit for risk reduction. Okay, so this comes from the CMAJ JAMC, and I think it was originally written in French. I think it might come out of Montreal. I'm trying to see here. No, Hamilton, Ontario. I used to play around there all the time in a band, when I was in a band. So anyway, so let's talk about this. All right, and I'll put the link below. I will for whatever I have on some of these things. When I walk past my waiting room, I see people wearing surgical masks. This scene becomes surreal when my patients are watching pandemic disaster movies on the wall-mounted television screen, movies that feature frightened crowds who wear similar masks in the vain hope of protection. As my eyes move from mask-wearing patients to screaming on-screen characters and back, I wonder, what is happening here? As represented by our cinema and other media, Western society expects too much of masks. In the public's mind, the still legitimate use of masks for source control has gone off-label. Masks are thought to prevent infection. From here, another problem arises. Because surgical masks are thought to protect against infection in the community setting, people wearing masks for legitimate purposes, those who have a cough in a hospital, say, form part of the larger misperception and act to reinforce it. Even this proper use of surgical masks is incorporated into a large improper use in the era of pandemic fear, especially in Asia, where such fear is nigh. Now we can count ourselves and we can't blame another country for being stupid. We're just as stupid. The widespread misconception about the use of surgical masks, that wearing a mask protects against the transmission of virus, is a problem of the kind theorized by German sociologist Ulrich Beck. The surgical mask communicates risk. For most, risk is perceived as the potential loss of something of value. But there is another side to risk. Memorably formulated by Beck in his Risk Society, Beck states that, let's see where we're sitting here. I just lost it. Beck states that Risk Society is a systematic way of dealing with hazards and insecurities induced and introduced by modernization itself. For Beck, risk occurs not only in the form of threat and possible loss, but also in society's organized management and response to these risks, which create a forwarding of present risk into the future. Furthermore, Beck writes of the symptoms and symbols of risk that combine in populations to create a cosmetics of risk. He suggests that people living in the present moment conceive of risk in terms of the physical tools used to mitigate risk while still maintaining the source of the filth. That's true. Joe just ate something he's allergic to, so he's coughing. Beck critiques the cosmetics of risk as measures that are not preventative, but rather act as a symbolic industry and policy of eliminating the increase in risk. It's more symbolic than anything, right? I propose that the surgical mask is a symbol that protects from the perception of risk by offering non-protection to the public while causing behaviors that project risk into the future. Let me repeat that. I propose that the surgical mask is a symbol that protects from the perception of risk by offering non-protection to the public while causing behaviors that project risk into the future. Histories of the surgical mask offer some clues about our contemporary risk profile, a profile that is, according to the nature of risk, future-oriented. The birth of the mask came from the realization that surgical wounds need protection from the droplets released in the breath of surgeons. The technology was applied outside the operating room in an effort to control the spread of infectious epidemics. In the 1919 influenza pandemic, masks were available and were dispensed to populations, but they had no impact on the epidemic curve. What? At the time, it was unknown that the influenza organism is nanoscopic and can theoretically penetrate the surgical mask barrier. Right, it goes right through the weave. It's not. Okay, let's go back. As recently as 2010, the U.S. National Academy of Sciences declared that in the community setting, face masks are not designed or certified to protect the wearer from exposure to respiratory hazards. A number of studies have shown that inefficacy, how do you say that? Thank you, honey, of the surgical mask in household settings to prevent transmission of the influenza virus. Really? Interesting. But Smith and colleagues in a recently published meta-analysis concluded that the surgical mask was non-inferior to the N95 mask in terms of influenza transmission rates among healthcare workers. So, healthcare workers should wear masks to prevent transmission for reasons other than source control, but the public shouldn't? This conflict creates an optics problem. When risk is perceived, readiness and protection for all those at risk becomes a goal, which thereby creates a constant state of preparedness and the universally vulnerable. Remember, the sinister-looking beaked plague mask from the Middle Ages that instilled fear in onlookers? Wearing a mask reinforces fear. The chomesis provided by the mask creates more risk of an effective kind. I mean, these aren't my words. It's from a medical journal, right? It induces fear, right? Okay. An effective problem occurs in the present through anticipation of an unknowable but somehow threatening future. Beck suggests that the cosmetic symbols are themselves manifestations of risk that bear their own risk. The same mask donned in the present for the common cold at a local clinic forms part of the cosmetic framework of future pandemic risk management. The future pandemic is perceived in the present, but but materially is not just in our minds. It is literally substantiated by the mask. So the mask is reinforcing any of that fear. Thus, we have the means for self-perpetuating system. The mask symbolically protects against infection just as it represents fear of that infection. The word was symbolically. The fear surfaces in public policy. In an annex to the Canadian Pandemic Influenza Preparedness Plan covering public health measures, the Public Health Agency of Canada does not recommend the use of masks by well individuals in pandemic situations, acknowledging that the mask has not been shown to be effective in such circumstances. However, this stance is complicated by the PHAC's, Public Health Agency of Canada, supporting reasons which relate to problems of supply, cost, distribution, and feasibility. Panic might occur if the availability of masks were limited. Public purchase of masks might limit the availability of masks in healthcare settings where they are required, and not all members of the public can afford to purchase masks. If masks are recommended by public health authorities, there could be an expectation that they will be publicly funded and made available by public health programs. The dimension of supply constitutes tacit acknowledgement that people expect masks to be available in pandemic situations, and they do if the evidence of popular cinema can be believed. Western society has already emerged into a present reality in which citizens are conditioned to want masks on the basis of media representations of pandemics. The same annex on public health measures refers to the false sense of security that a mask can psychologically provide, but the converse is the real risk posed to a government unable to mollify its population. The PHAC has warned that just as we do not know when the next pandemic will strike, we cannot predict how severe it will be. Now remember, we're talking about something that kills less than 1%. So it's not even a pandemic. So everybody's wearing masks for something that's not even a pandemic. So if you're wearing a mask, you're an idiot. Do your freaking research. More. Okay. Such a future-oriented plan mines anxiety in the present, which is like, that's the whole point. Fear and anxiety, fear and anxiety. We act out our collective anxiety about pandemics by wearing masks even when there isn't a pandemic. What, did I just say that? But wearing masks reinforces the idea of a possible future of pandemic. Well, it just might be one. The problem of risk management, well, hold on. The problem of effect in political terms is a contagious one. Fear spreads among the public, leading to intensification of risk management. The classic example being, excuse me, 9/11 and the war on terrorism. Fear of ineffective risk spreading communicably becomes an ironic pun. Pandemics occurred in 1918, 1957, 1968, 2003, and 2009. They're very rare, right? Thus, the conversation changes from if the next pandemic will occur to when the next pandemic will occur. Because we are currently between pandemics, our existence is bookended by the realized threats of the past and the reasonable threats of the future, to our detriment, with this detriment masked by the surgical mask itself. I have right here something that I carry around with me. I am exempt from all regulation mandating face mask usage in public. Wearing a face mask poses a health risk to me. Under the ADA and HIPAA, I am not required to disclose my medical condition to anyone. And then I have it right here. And then you get their name. If they insist, you get the name. Now, they can tell you that you need to leave. But I don't go anywhere that tells me I have to wear a mask. I can order online or I can go to another store. All right, so I'm over 15 minutes, but I don't care today. I got a lot to say about this. All right, so now we have the coronavirus and the Project Fear 3.0. You know what? I'm going to do part 1 and part 2. I like to keep it really short because people don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to do that. So, Radical Gardener, from my garden to yours, may your garden always grow, and I'm going to do a part 2. Okay, see you later. Bye.